Tonight, British police launched the biggest security operation in the nation's history on the eve of the Queen's funeral. A policewoman in hospital after a hit-run attack on school grounds. Melbourne's east lashed by a spring cold snap and intense thunderstorm. Local footy grand finals rocked by violence. A driver cheats death in a high-speed crash. Cats and Swans stars racing to be fit for Saturday's grand final, and exclusive access to the red carpet as the Brownlow medal returns with a bang.
Live from Melbourne, 7 News with Mike Amor starts now.
Good evening. British police are mounting the biggest security operation in the nation's history on the eve of the Queen's state funeral. For the first time, a monarch's grandchildren, including Prince William and Harry, held an emotional charged vigil, watching over their grandmother.
With 3 knocks on the stone floors of Westminster Hall, history was introduced. For the first time ever, a monarch's grandchildren were about to stand guard in the vigil of the princes. As the 8 cousins marched, everything else came to a halt. Princes William and Harry, Princess Anne's children, Zara Tindall and Peter Phillips, Prince Andrew's daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, and Prince Edward's children, Lady Louise and James Viscount Severn, just 14 years old. Harry, in uniform for the first and only time since the Queen's death, given one-off permission by his father, the King, as a mark of respect for the Crown. For the public streaming past, astonishment. They'd come to pay respects to the Queen and found themselves face to face with her family. Maybe 1,000 filed past during the 12-minute vigil. Their reactions ranged from overjoyed to overwhelmed.
I can't, honestly, sorry, I can't find the words for it.
It was
the whole
very
thing
emotional.
Unable to believe that after queuing for almost a day, their final minute had lined up with history.
It was very quiet, it was very solemn, and I think for them it must have been really quite difficult.
This generation of royals knows all about scrutiny. They've been dealing with it all of their lives, but this would have been so much harder, dealing with a very private grief in such a public way, and all of it streamed on TV worldwide. As the Westminster queues outside continued to grow, a surprise appearance. The crowds may have come to visit the Queen, but instead found the King visiting them. Charles and Prince William making an unannounced drop-in to say thank you for the overwhelming support.
30 hours no sleep.
Did you 30 hours? Yeah. You're very good on 30 hours.
They asked about the weather, the cold, the queues, small talk, giant impact. The crowd deeply appreciative.
This was totally unexpected this morning.
A heartwarming visit on the coldest of autumn days.
I can't talk right now, and I've just shook hands with Prince William.
Quite the moment for this small crowd, experiencing both the former monarch and the next 2, all in one day. In London, Chris Reason, 7 News.
There are concerns the Queen's funeral could be the target for disruption by protesters or worse. Hundreds of thousands of people are flooding into central London every day, placing extra pressure on security.
At the Metropolitan Police Nerve Centre, the King is briefed on how he and more than 1 million others will be kept safe.
So this team has been managing what we call Sector 2, Your Majesty, which is the ceremonial footprint. So this is the sort of nerve centre for all the sort of hundreds of officers in the area.
Did you get any sleep, he asked. A little, they say. I know the feeling, the monarch remarked, as the British capital prepares for the biggest police and security operation ever staged in the UK.
I don't like to use the word off the scale, but it's certainly very close.
Simon Morgan was a royal bodyguard for 7 years, protected the Queen. He says with so many people on the streets, so many dignitaries in town, there are so many risks.
International terrorism sits at the top. This is a very, very big target for a variety of reasons, not just because of all the people that are here, but because of what that would look like to the world.
Across London, security is already tight as a ring of steel is established around Westminster Abbey. Roads are closed. Armed police are on the streets. London has experience hosting aspects of the funeral day. The Queen Mother lay in state at Westminster Hall. Westminster Abbey hosted William and Catherine's wedding. Thousands lined the streets for the Jubilee. Harry and Meghan's nuptials attracted huge crowds to Windsor too. Presidents and Prime Ministers regularly visit. But experts say Monday is the equivalent of all 5 events happening at once.
It is a tried and tested format. However, not at this level.
It's not just the funeral day police are concerned about, it is every day during this mourning period. Throughout, hundreds of thousands of people have been coming into central London, lining the streets, hoping to see something, anything. The city is crowded. With always a chance they might catch a glimpse of the King, his protection officers are under renewed pressure.
They are the last line of defence. There's nothing between a senior member of the royal family and someone who wishes to do them harm other than a protection officer. So yes, the weight of responsibility is vast.
To protect the sovereign at all costs. In London, Hugh Whitfield, 7 News.
King Charles is preparing to host more than 500 dignitaries at Buckingham Palace in his first major event as monarch. Sarah Greenhalgh is at the palace, and Sarah, this is quite the guest list.
Certainly is, Mike. Good evening. This has been described as one of the biggest diplomatic occasions in a century, and it is easy to see why. Among the guests, Britain's new Prime Minister Liz Truss, the US President Joe Biden, and French President Emmanuel Macron, with representatives too from Ukraine, Saudi Arabia and China. One notable absentee will be Prince Harry. He and wife Meghan initially received an invitation to this event, but then were reportedly told not to attend, with the palace confirming it is for senior working royals only. As for our own Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, it'll be his second visit here to Buckingham Palace in as many days after a brief meeting with Australia's new head of state.
The Prime Minister of Australia, Your Majesty.
Even in mourning, duty called.
I know my world will be hugely tough.
In the gilded 1844 room at Buckingham Palace, a cavalcade of Commonwealth leaders.
Just want to touch it. That's all from people's heart as well. That's the great thing, isn't it?
A king's reception to mark a queen's farewell. The PM and partner Jodie Hayden signing a book of condolence honouring the monarch. Anthony Albanese and Governor-General David Hurley joining the hundreds of thousands of mourners in Westminster Hall, where leaders bowed to a queen who outserved them all.
You could feel the raw emotion in Westminster Hall. It was quite an extraordinary moment in history, but also a very personal one.
A staunch Republican at Royal HQ, Mr Albanese skipping questions on a referendum in Australia.
Now is not the time, and it was a warm gathering, and I've made my views very clear on that. This is a time of respect, is what is required here.
This wasn't just about sharing a message of condolence with the royal family, but with the people of the United Kingdom too, a message he shared directly with the new Prime Minister. Mr Albanese meeting privately with Liz Truss away from the cameras in Kent.
It was very positive, and we discussed a range of issues,
including the free trade agreement with the UK.
And I'm sure that the relationship between Australia and the UK can be strengthened even further in the future.
Also arriving in London to pay respects to the Queen, the US President and First Lady. Joe Biden says he wants a close relationship with King Charles. They'll meet at tonight's Buckingham Palace reception before tomorrow's state funeral. In London, Ashley Mullaney, 7 News.
The new Queen Consort has paid tribute to the late Queen, praising her mother-in-law for carving out her own role as a solitary woman in a male-dominated world.
She's got those wonderful blue eyes that when she smiles, they light up her whole face. I'll always remember that smile. That smile is unforgettable.
The pre-recorded tribute will be broadcast later tonight ahead of a national minute's silence. Thousands have spent the night queuing to see Queen Elizabeth lying in state. David Woywood is at the end of the line at Southwark Park. David, there's not much time left for those wanting to see their Queen.
Good evening, Mike. No, time is now critical for those wanting to see the Queen lying in state. The doors to Westminster Hall, where Her Majesty's coffin has been for the past 3 days, will be closing to the public in just over 20 hours now as those funeral preparations get underway. But look, the crowd continues to build down here on the banks of the Thames. It's currently running at around a 14-hour wait, and that means that unless people join within the next few hours, there is a very real danger they'll miss out on that opportunity of farewelling their Queen.
Basically, I worked for the Queen for 25 years, and I thought it poignant to come and pay my respects. We missed the opportunity to go and see her in Edinburgh, so we drove down today.
I've kind of lived locally and I was getting serious FOMO, and I know I was watching the live feed and I just was so proud of everyone queuing for so long and then paying their respects.
You've got a 14-hour wait. You're all prepared. You've got snacks, you've got drinks.
Yeah, absolutely, drinks and snacks, and
we're all good.
Now, the good news is conditions down here overnight, Mike, have been a little bit warmer for those braving the elements down here. Look, the mood in the crowd, it has been generally very friendly, a lot of chatter down here, a very light, jovial atmosphere, and of course, everyone gearing up for that unique experience at the end of this 14-hour wait.
Yeah, that is true dedication. David Woywood, thank you. And we'll have live coverage here on 7 of the funeral of Elizabeth II, starting from midday tomorrow. The historic ceremony getting underway soon after the news at 6. It'll be live and commercial free. To breaking news on a light plane missing in Victoria's high country. The aircraft was flying over the Lucy Vale area near Tallangatta when communication was lost. Police say they're assisting the joint rescue operation. It's unknown how many people are on board. A policewoman is in hospital after she was targeted in a callous hit-run attack. Sarah Jones has the details. And Sarah, she was struck by an accused hoon in a schoolyard.
Mike, the officer in her 20s, was responding to an incident at Patterson River Secondary College in Seaford. An alarm was set off around 3 a.m. after the driver broke into a staff room as well as the canteen. When the officers arrived and tried to stop the driver, one was struck by a white ute, leaving her with upper body injuries. Police Association Secretary Wayne Gatt has spoken to the officer this morning and says she's in good spirits. In a statement, he says it's fortunate she has not sustained any serious injuries that we're aware of. Situations like this provide a stark reminder of how dangerous it is for police and PSOs to go to work every day. There is security vision and police are confident of an arrest. Mike.
OK, Sarah, thank you. Melbourne's east has been hit by a spring cold snap and intense thunderstorms with strong winds and hail pelting the city's northeastern suburbs. Dollar-sized hailstones were recorded in the Yarra Valley and Ringwood around 2 o'clock, with 22 millimetres of rain falling in Rowville. The VFL Grand Final in Carlton wasn't spared from the weather either. We'll have Jane Bunn with your full weather forecast live from the Brownlow later in the bulletin. Wild brawls have marred the last weekend of local footy games. A player jumped the fence at Carisbrook and Harcourt Grand Final and became involved in an ugly off-field fight. At the end of the Lancaster and Murchison Toolamba game yesterday afternoon, players and spectators were involved in a huge post-match fight. Police were called and the league is investigating. Well, footy's most glamorous night is back in all its glory, and as we count down to tonight's Brownlow medal, Rebecca Madden is hosting the event at Crown, while Mitch Cleary is at the Swans function in Sydney. Beck, first to you. Organisers have had their work cut out to be ready on time.
Good evening to you, Mike. The traditional Monday count has been fast-tracked to tonight to avoid that clash with the Queen's funeral. We are almost back to normal after 2 years of COVID-impacted events, but Geelong players will be in a separate room tonight to limit their potential exposure ahead of the grand final on Saturday. The Brownlow is renowned as Melbourne's premier red carpet event, and we have seen some incredible gowns already here tonight. We will be going into the fashion detail a little later in the bulletin. As for the count, though, it is wide open this year with Lachie Neale, Clayton Oliver and Patrick Cripps among the contenders.
The votes arrive and then it's a bit of a scramble and you can't really leave. I reckon you have a feel for it about halfway through the count, and that's when we try and start shuffling and ordering and giving it a bit of a theatre, and you're sort of, it's sort of fun.
It's nice. It's nice to be back at Crown and see the city so alive and so many events. It's really good.
Well, the Brownlow begins straight after the news, Mike. It is all live right here on 7.
Have fun and good luck. Thanks, Beck. To Mitch Cleary now. And Mitch, it's the start of a very exciting week for the Swans.
Good evening, Mike. We're inside the famous SCG Members Pavilion. It's Sydney's own red carpet for their Brownlow function tonight. 5 players and their partners, plus coach John Longmire in attendance tonight, opting to stay in Sydney for the week in order to get their perfect preparation for the big game on Saturday. They'll stay in Sydney until Thursday, flying down for the grand final parade on Friday. In sport, we'll hear and speak one-on-one with Tom Papley on that match-defining mark and goal that sunk the Pies right here yesterday in that preliminary final. Mike?
OK, thanks, Mitch. Geelong fans are urging all Victorians to jump on the Cats bandwagon ahead of Saturday's grand final against the Swans. The decider looming as a potential swan song for one of the game's all-time greats.
A lick of the Cats' colours on the Arcadia pub in South Yarra.
We'll probably be here, I think, till 9 or 10 o'clock tonight. Hopefully it doesn't get too cold. We get a lot of regular customers continually asking, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to paint it this year? So I thought I'd better not disappoint them.
It's a tradition. Every year Geelong makes the grand final, hoping to be the stroke of luck needed for Saturday.
So what do they call this? Do they call this Geelong Blue?
I think that's the new name for it.
Patrick Dangerfield now just one win away from that elusive premiership.
It's great for the club, it's great for the town, and it's why you put in all the hard work that we have this year, so we'll embrace it and enjoy every bit of it.
Swans fans still catching their breath after last night's heartstopper against Collingwood.
Sydney have had an incredibly consistent year, and we know how good Geelong are. Having to fight right to the wire with Sydney last night, I'm sure that would take a lot out of them and wouldn't put them in perfect preparation for the grand final.
This will be the first grand final in 15 years without a Melbourne-based club. A stat that doesn't worry this divided couple.
Sleeping in different bedrooms this week?
Yeah, absolutely. The house is going to be in red and white. We're going to have eggshells thrown at us. It's going to be fantastic.
No, it'll be fine.
Saturday, a potential fairy tale swan song for veteran Buddy Franklin.
It would be a fitting end to a 10-year contract. Also, Paddy McCartan. I mean, what a story it is for him to look like he was lost to football and now end up in a grand final.
All grand final tickets have now been allocated, with 34,000 going to Sydney and Geelong Club members. Just 8,000 will be available for MCC members on a first-in, first-served basis on Saturday. Pies fans needn't worry about tickets for at least another year, as busloads made the heartbreaking return from Sydney.
How is everyone feeling on the trip back? So close.
Yeah, so close, but it's been a win for the year. Finished at second last year, and I think we're all pretty happy.
It was a bit more sombre on the way home, but hey, we're really proud of them.
Normally I'll be sad in a normal case, but this time I'm just so proud of them.
Considering we were 17th last year, way to go, boys. So proud. We'll be there next year. Go Pies!
Tegan Dolling, 7 News.
And Tim Watson is also at tonight's Brownlow function. Tim, both grand finalists are carrying injuries into the decider.
Well, Mike, it's going to be a nervous week for a few stars. Coming up in sport, hear from both Max Holmes and Sam Reid on their fight to be fit for Saturday. And the fallout for the Magpies following their heartbreaking end to the season. And Mike, plenty of action here on the red carpet too. We'll be back with all the contenders for tonight's count shortly in Sports. See you again.
Look forward to it. See you soon. Thanks, Tim. A wild night has come to a terrifying end at an Oakley South petrol station. Details next on 7 News. Also ahead, the Premier's $1 billion tribute to the Queen. A footy legend reveals his shock health battle.
And we're heading into a week of highs and lows. I'll show you if the rain will clear in time for the grand final.
A petrol bowser has been ripped from the ground in a dramatic car crash at a service station in Melbourne southeast. The driver cheated death but was hospitalised after crawling from the wreckage.
A
A driver with no control and risking instant combustion. This vehicle was on two wheels on Koora Road, Oakley South, as it toppled a petrol bowser and broke apart. A potential disaster for the driver and anyone else in the vicinity.
Especially at night, if this sort of accident happens and, everyone's sleeping and if there's a big fire, it would have been a bit of a problem.
Just after 4 o'clock this morning, passers-by and nearby residents came to the aid of the injured driver. Bleeding heavily, he'd crawled out of the car, which landed on its roof.
And he was just laying down there because I think he didn't have any more energy to move because he was totally covered in blood.
They were quickly joined by relatives of the 24-year-old Clayton man. The mother of the driver arrived at the scene around 20 minutes after the crash. Both she and her son told the people who were helping him to call for an ambulance, but not police. Emergency services arrived nearly half an hour after the crash. The bowser contained a small amount of fuel and no power, minimising the potential for an explosion. Speed will be investigated as a factor in the crash. A car was caught by a security camera travelling well over the speed limit, about 100 metres up the road. The driver remains in hospital due to his head injury and is yet to be interviewed by police. The owner of the service station is also after an explanation.
What exactly happened? Just find out, if it was like a genuine mistake.
Cameron Bowe, 7 News.
The Andrews government has announced $1 billion tribute to the Queen if it wins November's election. Labor has vowed to revamp and rename Maroondah Hospital just a day after the opposition promised to fix the same facility.
A hospital in the city's east, now a key election battleground.
$850 million to $1,050 million. To build a new Maroondah hospital.
$1 billion to redevelop and rename the facility as Queen Elizabeth II. It includes a new emergency department, operating theatres and more than 200 new beds. And comes a day after this from the opposition.
Today we're announcing $400 million to upgrade the Maroondah Hospital.
The government then insisting it wouldn't follow suit.
Would an Andrews Labor government match this offer of $400 million for Maroondah Hospital?
Well, we're not going to be dictated or influenced by any announcements that the opposition make.
Today claims it's not a knee-jerk reaction but a more realistic proposal.
They're going to build a whole lot of stuff, including an ED, for $400 million. The ED alone costs $370 million. There's nothing right about the commitments they made yesterday. They're quite wrong. We're getting on and getting this done properly.
As the opposition leader made another health pledge, $108 million for a Box Hill Hospital research facility and 800 low-cost car parks, half of them free for healthcare staff.
We're focused on rebuilding the whole state's health network. I'm not making a sporadic announcement here, there and maybe everywhere.
The government not ruling out further health promises of its own.
As I said, we'll be making other announcements about health, and when we make them, you'll see where they're located and what the nature of them is.
Jodie Lee, 7 News.
Cosplay convention organisers are offering refunds to angry fans after major crowd capacity issues on its opening day. Hundreds of ticket holders were denied entry to Jeff's shed after waiting in line for up to 5 hours.
We acknowledge that there were some fans who were not able to get in yesterday, and we very much wanted to make sure that we could fix everything we could.
I feel like today's been a bit more organised, everything's flowed a bit better.
The event was sold out, but an online glitch allowed fans to continue buying day passes for up to $100 each. Footy legend Mario Fenech has spoken up about the severe brain damage he's suffering after years of head knocks on the field. Doctors say it's only a matter of time before the 60-year-old needs full-time care.
It's the saddest thing that it's such a silent, lonely killer.
People are going to learn from what we're saying here today.
And we don't want other kids to get brain damage like you.
The full story is on 7's Spotlight after tonight's Brownlow count. An earthquake has shaken Melbourne's southeast. Up next, residents rocked by the early morning tremor. Also ahead, chilling torture tactics exposed from the war in Ukraine. A 60-year-old daredevil reaching new heights. And long overdue recognition for Victorians killed in the line of duty. An earthquake has rattled residents across Melbourne's southeast. The 2.4 magnitude quake struck early this morning, roaring like a freight train.
5:41 this morning, you can barely see the rattle of the earthquake on security cameras, but the boom was unmissable, loud enough to jolt residents across Frankston, Cranbourne and Langwarrin.
It did wake me up.
Like a really loud truck coming, or like a really loud train.
According to Melbourne Uni's seismology research group, it happened within the top 1.5 kilometres of the Earth's crust.
When earthquakes are shallow, closer to the surface, and you're nearby them, you can hear them. You can hear the bangs from the two energy waves that are appearing.
The 2.4 magnitude earthquake struck just near the Frankston golf course. The closest estimate is directly underneath Settlers Way.
You can see it's right under some houses, so the people who were in this area here would have really felt a quick, really sharp jolt.
And I thought, oh, something's hit the house.
Yeah, there was just it felt like somebody hit the house.
The last significant earthquake felt in Melbourne was almost exactly a year ago, measuring 5.9. While this one was a lot smaller, it was also much closer to the city.
Last year's quake was the largest in Australia since the 1800s, damaging buildings and felt hundreds of kilometres away. Christy Cooper, 7 News.
The US is resisting pressure to deliver a more powerful weapons system for Ukraine to use in its war against Russia. The White House is warning Vladimir Putin not to consider chemical or tactical nuclear weapons.
It will change the face of war, unlike anything since World War II.
President Biden's stance comes as Ukrainian authorities dig up hundreds of graves from reclaimed territory. They claim they've found evidence of torture chambers and war crimes. Communities on the west coast of Alaska are being battered as wild weather from a typhoon brings heavy rain and winds of more than 95 kilometres per hour. A disaster declaration has been made for affected areas, and there are warnings some parts could see flooding not seen in 5 decades. The daredevil known as the French Spider-Man has celebrated his 60th birthday by climbing a skyscraper. Alain Robert made it all the way up the 187-metre tower using only his bare hands and climbing shoes. He's climbed more than 150 skyscrapers around the world and says he has no plans to slow down. Police are honouring officers killed in the line of duty but buried in unmarked graves for more than a century. The Chief Commissioner unveiled new headstones to ensure they'll never be forgotten.
A haunting service long overdue for Constable James Deacon. Killed on duty in a horse carriage accident, he lay in an unmarked grave for 151 years until now.
You know, it's quite moving. Excuse me. Yeah, it's very nice, very nice.
One of 7 officers killed on duty in the 1800s lying in unmarked graves here, found by the force and given headstones.
Once you're a part of the police family, you remain a part of the police family forever.
Inspector Edward Hall died in an 1892 horse and buggy accident. Why were these officers in unmarked graves in the first place?
When they died, their families were left destitute and they simply didn't have the money to mark the grave. So it's some small way of making up for that. This is the Victoria Police Star.
And for James Deacon's family, it's never too late to make amends.
Even if it's taken over 150 years to get there, we've finally got there, so magnificent.
Nick McCallum, 7 News.
A Victorian politician has become the victim of a kerosene vandal attack. Details next on 7 News. Also coming up, police caught up in a bizarre chase.
And the Palladium here at Crown is filling up fast. I'll have the full fashion wrap-up coming up straight after sport.
An anti-abortion vandal has attempted to set fire to a Q candidate's campaign office. Pro-abortion independent Sophie Tawney says a family member saw a man throw bark against the entrance before discovering it was doused in kerosene. The man is known to the campaign team and has verbally abused female staffers in the past. The incident has been reported to police. A nasal spray is poised to be the next line of defence in stopping the transmission of COVID-19. Melbourne scientists are working on the project with the help of 400 carefully selected families.
2 puffs in each nostril 3 times a day.
It can be used by young people, elderly people, families, people who weren't vaccinated.
The spray will help prevent people both picking up and transmitting COVID-19.
That has just the right sort of features to coat the nasal mucosa and stop the virus from spreading.
The drug used is known as heparin. It's usually injected as a blood-thinning drug, and because it's already approved,
but it could be available relatively quickly.
The spray will be tested in a clinical trial using positive cases recruited through Melbourne's Northern Hospital.
What we're looking is for their entire household to agree to come into the trial so we can assess whether or not the intranasal heparin will stop the COVID spreading from the index case within the house to the other household members.
The Victorian government has backed the project.
I think it's $4.2 million of money well spent. It basically is part of an ongoing effort worldwide.
And it will be affordable when it's available.
It's relatively low priced. That could be a few dollars for a 2-week treatment.
Chanel Vella, 7 News.
A man has been nabbed wandering naked in a busy shopping strip. Witnesses raised the alarm in suburban Sydney and police arrived within minutes. The man led officers on a brief foot chase, but they managed to catch him. He was taken to hospital for mental health assessment. Returning now to a very dapper Tim Watson with sport from the Brownlow medal. Tim, this count could go right down to the wire.
I think so, Mike. It's looming as a nail-biter tonight. We'll hear from the hot contenders next. Also, the cat's out of the bag. We speak with Max Holmes on his fitness fight ahead of the grand final. Tom Papley tells us about that controversial call that broke Magpie hearts. The Spurs run riot in the Premier League. And forget about the footy. Sonia Marinelli will have the full fashion breakdown from the Brownlow shortly. Welcome back to Crown. Ahead of tonight's Brownlow medal, Chief Football Reporter Tommy Brown has been crunching the numbers. And Tom, I think we're in for a tight count.
Tim, contacts that run the spreadsheets through the various permutations tell me there could be 5 or 6 winners, different winners tonight, but a consistent theme clearly is Lachie Neale and Clayton Oliver. Miller considered a bit of a smoky from the Suns. These were some of the latest hits from the contenders a short time ago from the red carpet.
I know that I'm sort of talking about as a favourite, but I feel like there's so many contenders this year, so just going to go in and enjoy the night with Jules and the rest of the guys and their partners, and yeah, if it happens then great, but if not, all good. There's some great names that have won 2 or more Brownlows, and probably doesn't sit well with me that I'd join those.
Oh, I think Clayton. Yeah, I think my teammate's a genuine chance to win it. It's going to be a close count, which is exciting for the viewers.
Now, Tim, James Hird in contention for the vacant Essendon coaching job. I spoke to Lachie Whitfield, who's played under Hird in the assistant coaching box at the Giants this year in regards to his recommendation. Also asking Dyson Heppel about his future, confirming it at the Bombers.
I think Hird would be fantastic. He's one of the best people I've met in footy. I only had him for a year, unfortunately, but I can't speak highly enough of him. If he goes to Essendon, I think that they've got a great match.
What's going on in terms of Essendon? Do you think you'll stay?
Yeah, look, I certainly think I'm going to stay at the Bombers. So, yeah, the things are playing out in terms of the coach, and hopefully we get a good one there, and I guess get the club back on track.
Tim, we'll get a better idea on Brodie Grundy's future in coming days with the Collingwood exit interviews tomorrow. An important day for Tasmania. The public will receive information on Tasmania's pitch. The AFL putting it on the clubs to decide. I spoke to Gil McLaughlin about that tonight, Tim.
Thanks, Tom. The Swans are celebrating the night in Sydney, returning to Mitch Cleary at the SCG function. And Mitch, it's going to be a huge week for the grand finalists.
Well, Tim, Swans co-captain Callum Mills is their best chance tonight, but they're chasing a much bigger prize on Saturday. Players will be straight back into training tomorrow to start preparations to try and beat Geelong for a second time this year. Tom Papley will be critical to those plans after delivering a controversial match-winning mark and goal yesterday, all while being the Swans' chief motivator.
One of my strengths is to bring energy to the team and create that spark, and I'll try to do that. Just a bit of nice forward craft, I'd say, but that's footy. I think if you're going to judge it on that moment, there's 2 hours in a game, and to judge it on that moment, and I don't know, just a bit stupid.
Both teams have injury concerns leading in. An important cat starting running today in his bid to play on Saturday. Heading into the club for early treatment, there's a sense of relief for Max Holmes after a Friday night scare.
I've never done a hammy, so I thought I'd pinged it, obviously, by my reaction. But yeah, it looks all good right now, so we'll just see how it goes during the week, and should be all good to go.
He'll hope to get the final tick of approval at Wednesday's main session.
Max is tracking well. He's he's an incredibly positive person, and we'll find out as the week progresses how he functions come probably our main training.
The Cats held a 10 a.m. meeting to sort through a week of logistics. With his body in top shape, Patrick Dangerfield is attempting to finally break through for that elusive first flag.
There's storylines everywhere. You know, there's going to be 44 players that take to the field that each have, you know, different stories around how they've become AFL players and joined the clubs that they have.
For the Swans, it's headlined by Buddy Franklin, who can seal his legacy in Sydney 9 years after making the move north.
He knows how hard they are to win too. I mean, he knows how hard, he respects the stage.
Light recovery at Swans HQ today. Sam Reid set for scans on his adductor injury in a bid to repeat premiership glory 10 years on.
One set.
Confident you'll be right to play this week?
One set.
The Pies left licking their wounds. More than an hour after the final siren, Seven's cameras capturing Nick Dacos and Isaac Quaynor back on the SCG, reliving the heartache.
There'll be a lot of people laying in bed tonight going, if only, what if? Yeah, just don't want to live in that space. Because winners pick themselves up and use the lessons and get better and use it for motivation.
And optimism that 2023 tilt will include Jordan De Goey.
I grabbed his manager and said, mate, let's get to work on this, because I've openly said this, I want Geordie at our footy club next year.
Mitch Cleary, 7 News.
Brisbane is shaping as the team to beat this AFLW season. The Lions came from 3 goals down to claim a 15-point win over Naum. Collingwood's undefeated start to the season is over, going down to reigning premiers Adelaide by 6 points, while Richmond has jumped into the top 8, holding off a late push from Essendon to win by 2 points. Casey has capped off a great year to claim the VFL premiership. The Demons ran out 32-point winners over Southport. Jake Melksham kicking 4 goals. It's the first time the club has won the competition since 1999, back when they were known as Springvale. And Tottenham has joined Manchester City on top of the Premier League thanks to a 6-2 thumping of Leicester City. Man City defeated Wolves 3-0. Huge night here, Mike. I'm thinking a tie, Lachie Neale and Clayton Oliver. They've got plenty of Brownlows out there, so that won't be a problem for anybody.
Thanks, Tim. The Brownlow Medal red carpet has been rolled out at Crown for the first time in 3 years. Sonia Marinelli is keeping a close eye on all the guests on. Melbourne's biggest fashion spectacle is living up to the hype.
Mike, it's been an absolute knockout. After a thrilling season of footy, tonight it's the moment to shine for the partners of the players. And I can tell you there's been plenty of memorable fashion moments. And as the medal count gets underway inside, here's a look at all the highlights from tonight's red carpet. After 2 years on the sidelines, Brownlow glamour is back. Show-stopping knockout gowns, pink, and more pink. Players' wives and girlfriends daring to be bold with bright bursts of colour.
You're always going to get a little bit of a backlash for doing something out there, but I love the sheer see-through dresses, so it's nice to also push the boundaries a little bit as well.
Danielle Laidley dazzled. The former North Melbourne coach has attended many Brownlows, but this was her red carpet debut.
Perhaps, 8 or 9 Brownlows, now to be here celebrating as myself.
I'm so very grateful.
Some gowns glistened in gold while sparkles were right on trend.
I'm actually blending in because everyone's in sequins.
Some headed back in classic black or white.
I just want a classy, elegant, comfortable dress.
Winning votes where it counts.
10 out of 10, as usual. No, she looks beautiful.
Getting red carpet ready takes a dream team. Stylists, designers and hair and makeup artists spend months pulling a look together and hours on the day bringing it to life. They're thrilled to be busy once again.
I think we've really missed it, so it's just great to be back.
I think a lot of people have been inspired by Kendall Jenner, so you're going to see a lot of sleek looks, a lot of polish, everything ultra shiny and ultra smooth.
They really feel amazing, that they feel elevated, they feel beautiful.
As Melbourne's premier couture event, designers rely on Brownlow Night to showcase their artistry, all hoping their creations will be remembered for the right reasons. Sonia Marinelli, 7 News.
And a sparkling Jane Bunn joins us now. Jane, a dramatic weather day. When is it going to improve?
Well, Mike, by Tuesday we'll have a spring in our step, but then it heads downhill once again. The full details are next.
Monday, the royal funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. The world unites for the grateful goodbye. 7 News is there to bring you unrivaled coverage with Britain's greatest royal team.
You'll have the best front row seat
To history.
Celebrate the life of this most remarkable woman.
Every moment live right through the day.
Join us live from midday as we farewell our Queen.
The very special event, the royal funeral, starts live with 7 News, Monday, 6 o'clock.
Hello again. A winter cold snap brought hail to Melbourne's suburbs. It's only made for a chilly arrival at the Brownlow tonight. Now, it briefly reached a top of 15.6. That was in the city early this afternoon. Then it tumbled down to the low teens as our latest burst of wet weather arrived. After a generally dry start, the showers increased to persistent rain at times. Now, within that activity, there were thunderstorms, bringing locally damaging winds and lots of wintry hail. The wet weather does continue tonight. It is pouring outside now, but before it arrived, Avalon reached 18 degrees, while Mount Dandenong didn't even reach double figures. Those showers increased over much of Victoria too. Thunderstorms embedded in there with less activity in the northwest and southeast. The Alps are enjoying a late burst of snow that is blanketing the slopes in a fresh cover of white, with 2 weeks left in the snow season. Today's cold front was the last in a series of disturbances affecting southeastern parts of the country. Tomorrow brings a calming high that is starting to move in. So if the wind was a bit much for you today, that'll be rather appealing, that high. But it doesn't last long. There is a new low pressure system crossing the Bight. With all this wet weather activity, there are quite a few rivers in flood. Parts of the Murray and King rivers are in moderate flood. And the latest addition to this list is the Werribee River at Balan. Now, things calm down tomorrow as the high moves through. And if you like lighter winds and sunshine, you'll be pleased to know there is a fair bit of that on the way. However, we'll have to wait for Tuesday to see that in Melbourne. Then the next rain system mainly affects northern Victoria. That is due midweek. Around the nation tomorrow, with the high moving eastwards, much of the east clears up. Brisbane 29 in the sunshine, Sydney 23. Early cloud, then sunshine for Adelaide, showery in Perth with the risk of a storm with wintry hail. To Victoria, if you're north of the ranges, it is dry tomorrow, but cloud rebuilds. Showers continue in the south and on the ranges, but there's much less activity than today. A moderate westerly, becoming light in the west as the high moves in. Closer in, showers over southeastern suburbs at first. They'll spread through once again in the late morning and afternoon, but much less than we saw today. There should be long dry breaks with pockets of sunshine. So there is still the risk of showers. The city may see those in the afternoon and early evening, but it does look dry for much of the time, a top of 16. On the 8-day outlook, Tuesday, lovely, heading up to 19. There's lots of sunshine. On Wednesday, thick cloud, but just some patchy light rain. It's not overly cold under that, a bit humid too. Thursday, lovely, should rise back up to 20. But Friday, showers and thunderstorms, they are a risk. Now that should clear on Saturday morning, which will be great. 16 tomorrow, still have some showers passing through, mainly in the afternoon. Mike?
OK, thanks, Jane. Have fun. And that's 7 News for this Sunday, the 18th of September. We'll have updates throughout the evening. Up next, we're off to Crown for the 2022 Brownlow Medal. Have a great night.